this week's episode of Just Chris Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carter. We are in episode 35. I took the last week and a half off of the podcast just to get caught up on some things, and we are back. We're back this week. I'm sorry if I'm talking kind of quiet. It's currently 12:30 on a Tuesday night. Planned on knocking this out once I got off work this afternoon, but I had a couple things I had to do instead, and I just happened to get home. So if I'm talking quiet, I'm gonna try to boost it up a little bit post-production, see what I can do. But if not, turn your headphones up, turn your car stereo up, I guess. I don't know. We're bouncing back this week after our most recent episodes with Jared Varner and Thaddeus Breckenridge, and I got to bring it back to the solo episodes. I got to take us back to where we started. I love having guests on the podcast. I really do enjoy getting a different point of view from everyone and just asking a ton of questions and getting different responses. But I also do love the solo podcasts. Feels great to get back on the mic by myself here. And I have an episode prepared for you guys where we will be diving into the final results for the 2021 Olympics. Kind of late on the response for that by, I'd say, about a month, but finally getting the opportunity to sit down and knock it out. But before we get into it, I do have a couple other things that I would like to talk about. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, it's your first time listening, you might as well subscribe there as well. Maybe leave a five stars and review it. Completely up to you. I'm not putting it on you here. But if that's the case, you might as well just check it out. And then if you're listening to this on Anchor, you're reading the bio, whatever, and you're interested in supporting the podcast, just click the link. Everything is in the description to the episode. Any resources you want, we're all there. Do have a couple updates with the subscription, with the Just Chris Podcast subscription. They have added changes through Anchor for the subscription, which I believe it includes different tiers, different access to specific things. It really seems like Anchor's stepping it up, and really comparing themselves to, Spotify with premium podcasts, Apple with now premium podcasts, Patreon, which has been in the game for a minute, and then OnlyFans, which by surprise is taking the transition from adult content to a more traditional subscription-based premium content. RIP to everyone's careers in that. I guess no longer you're going to be in the top 1%, but Anchor has stepped it up. They've really been doing a lot of big things with the platform. Ever since they were bought by Spotify, it's only been upgrades. Like from here on out, I'm stoked to continue to kind of see what they do. The future with Anchor, however, I'm not sure how long I'll be staying with them, but until then, I'm definitely satisfied with what they're doing. CEO of Anchor, I know you're listening to this episode. Appreciate the work. I appreciate the effort. Back to, what we were talking about, though. Before we get into the Olympic recap, I do want to update you guys on a couple things going on in life right now. I recently started a new book. Wait, what? Chris knows how to read? I know, it's a surprise to me as well. I do know how to read. And actually, with my podcast with Thaddeus Breckenridge, he went and shared a couple of his most recent copies from the bookstore, which included The Art of War and 48 Laws of Power. And I had been hearing a lot of great things about the 48 Laws of Power. I listened to another podcast where every Tuesday he updates us with, a new chapter in the book. And I've been really wanting to check it out. I've been wanting to pull the trigger on purchasing it. And actually, I was sitting at work the other day, and my mom texted me, shout out to the GOAT, as always. My mom texted me, she goes, "I have a surprise for you." And in my head, I'm thinking, oh God, what could this possibly be? So I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, okay. I text back, said, "Is it something I can physically hold in my hand?" And she's like, "Why? Do you know what it is already?" Whoa. Slow your roll a little bit. Now, I don't know what it is. I was like, just let me know. I took a guess, and I guessed, do we get another puppy? Which I knew was going to be a no, but just wanted to see what she would say. She sends a screenshot back of a checkout from Amazon, which included, drumroll please, the 48 Laws of Power written by Robert Greene. And I was like, no way. No way did she really purchase that for me. Said, yeah, I heard you talking about it in the podcast with Thad, and I'm hoping, you actually want to sit down and read through it. And then in addition to that, Thad and I talked about The Art of War, which to my surprise, I went to my bookshelf earlier before I hopped on the podcast, and I actually have The Art of War sitting on my bookshelf. So once I finish the 48 Laws of Power, I'm then transitioning to The Art of War. A couple other books I do have in mind that I would like to read, but I'm not going to kind of overwhelm myself with that stuff before I even get halfway through the 48 Laws of Power. Now, this book, it's honestly like so far, I'm loving it so far. I was kind of anxious going into it because I've always been saying like, I just need to start reading. I need to start getting back into reading, getting back in the habit of kind of being on a schedule with it. And I knew with this book, like, I have to take time out of my day to read it. And I found it quite easy to do. I mean, literally, it's 20 less minutes you spend on your phone, 20 less minutes you spend watching TV, whatever, just to knock out like 10 to 15 pages. Super easy read. And I started on Sunday night where the goal was just 10 pages. Like, let's just do 10 pages a day and kind of see where it goes, see where it takes us. Read 10 pages, and the next day I was like, you know what? I'm starting to get into it. I'm wanting to read more. So day after day, today is now Tuesday night as I'm recording this. I'm 60 something pages into the book, and it's great. This is actually the first book that I haven't gone and seen how many pages are in it total, just because, like, one, I don't want to overwhelm myself, and two, regardless, I'm still going to read the book. Like, it's still getting read, so like, why worry about how many pages I have left? Now it is a thick book, but I mean, it's filled with 48 crucial laws of power here, 48 extremely helpful things. And reading through it, it reminds me a ton of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Another great book, I'm gonna put it on the to read list for you guys. Another incredible book. And going through some of the 48 laws, they remind me a lot of kind of what was taught in How to Win Friends and Influence People. Though it's not entirely the same, a lot of this stuff is kind of built based off of that. Now, I'm not sure when the book was written as compared to How to Win Friends and Influence People, but that book has been around for an extremely, extremely long time. It's gone through like, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 revisions since then. So, I mean, I guess everything kind of goes back to How to Win Friends and Influence People. Again, like, this is one book that I've always cited back to, always have kind of kept in my back pocket, to be quite honest. Whenever I've gone on a trip, wherever I'm driving, I just happen to always have that book in the car. I always bring that book with me on trips, just because it's so easy to go back through and kind of reread some of this stuff, kind of recap or kind of refresh your memory on a lot of the great things Dale Carnegie goes and hits on. And I've had friends reach out to me like, Chris, like, I'm wanting to read, I'm wanting to get better at this one thing, I'm wanting to do this. Where do I start? And I mean, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you've asked me the question, Chris, what do I start reading? I've told you How to Win Friends and Influence People. And now I'm at a point where not only am I going to continue to share that book, but I'm going to tell people about the 48 Laws of Power. Actually, I had a phone call with a friend tonight once I got off work, and he was like, Chris, I'm caught up on the book. Like, we're 30, 40 pages into it, and I'm loving it so far. Like, a lot of great things that you said, a lot of great things that you've been doing that I may not have noticed before I started reading the book, but now that I'm reading it, like, I'm starting to see it. And I would say, like, with that book, like, a lot of the noticeable things, or a lot of the things, like, aren't noticeable to the average person, or like that you don't really think about it until like it's pointed out to you. And I would say it's like the very same thing with the 48 Laws of Power. A lot of these things aren't going to like obviously slap you in the face when you read about it, hear about it, whatever. But when you actually see it, you're like, oh, wow, that kind of makes sense. So he caught me up on his reading with that. And that's when I told him, I was like, look, check this book out when you finish. And once you finish reading that, I will tell you about another book. I just didn't want to overwhelm him with book titles here. But what I'm going to suggest to him next is The Art of War, which is actually on my reading list after that. I have been wanting to, like I said, I have been wanting to get back into reading. I have a huge bookshelf in my room. I've read maybe, I don't know, maybe like half of those books. Nowhere near satisfied with like how many I could have read by now. I mean, all this free time, like 20 minutes, like I said, 20 minutes every day. Like I could have finished all of those books by now. I've had them up for years. So I'm kind of hoping getting back into it with the 48 Laws of Power and The Art of War, it will kind of continue to hold that flame and want me to, or encourage me to continue to read. That's how I'm feeling about it. I mean, great book. That's kind of all I have for Just Chris podcast, book club edition, the topic of book club, whatever. Check out those books on Amazon. Check them out. Google them, whatever. I'm gonna put you guys onto something here. If you literally just type in the title of the book, then add PDF at the end of it, you have the entire book online. So if you're more into like digital reading, check that out. I'm not so big on it. I'd much rather prefer to have like a physical copy in front of me. But check that out. Free, easy way to get books online. Now, the next thing I do want to talk about before we get into our final Olympic recap is I got a pretty busy month coming. Going into September, I have quite a few things on the agenda. I'm actually going to West Virginia at the end of the month. I'm sending it back up north to see the boys for the weekend. Going to a couple concerts. I'm going to see Jack Harlow and I'm going to see Lil Baby. And then I would like to make it down to Greenville, South Carolina to see that boy George soon. I told him after I finish up with September's close week, we're going to kind of revisit the topic. I'm trying to make it back down to there. And, I think it's going to be a pretty busy month. And something that I found kind of interesting with that is when I tend to kind of pack my weekends back to back to back to back, like time flies by. It goes by super quick. And back in, I believe like last September, around this time, September, October, I was doing the exact same thing. I was trying to travel as much as possible, trying to do as much as possible within like a short period of time. And looking back on it, like that time blew by. Like if I could go back like a year ago today, whatever, I was out in Washington, I was out in Nevada, Colorado, and it's crazy to think like a year later, we're back in the same spot. So pretty busy month coming up. And then in addition to that, October, I don't really have much planned for October yet, but I am going to see Young Gravy down in Greenville, North Carolina. Going to see him. Pretty stoked about that. I'm not 100% on who's touring with him. Regardless, like I think it's going to be a good concert. And then November, going to another little event down in Florida. Flying into Tampa, driving out to Orlando, catching up with some friends out there. So looking forward to it. But, on the agenda right now, this week as I'm recording, I'm actually flying out to Houston on Thursday night. Dang, Chris, like, you're really going places. You're really traveling out here. Yeah, I am. I don't know what I can say about it, but I'm super stoked to go to Houston. Actually, it's kind of like a funny story of how it all came about. A friend of mine put up on Facebook, he was like, if you're reading this, you're invited to my birthday party on this date at this location. And I mean, Houston, it's like a 24 hour, no, not even 24. I think it's like 18 or 19, like an 18 or 19 hour drive from Raleigh down to Houston. So I saw his post and I commented, kind of just messing around. I said, all right, looking forward to it. I will be there. Not really taking it all that serious, but a couple weeks went by and I was talking to another friend, an old teammate. He's like, yeah, I'm kind of looking to go down to Houston for this little event. And that's when it clicked in my head. I was like, you know what? I already made the comment, like it's already Facebook official that I'm going down there. So I'm going to have to make it happen. Went through, shout out to Kiwi, the app that I use for all of my flights. It may not hit everything you want when looking for a flight, to be honest. But it gets you pretty darn close. So I was able to get tickets for under $175 each. The only downside to it is, I mean, a couple a couple of downsides to it. One, flying Frontier. Oh well, shake it off. Um, you get from A to B, and that's all that really matters. It's not too long of a flight. However, the next problem that we ran into, I have a 7-hour layover in Tampa. And it'd be all right if it was like during the day and I could just like go to the beach or whatever. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We're flying out from Raleigh Thursday night, and we'll get to Houston, or we'll get to Tampa probably around like 11:30, 12 o'clock. Okay, not bad. But we don't fly out until like 6:30 the next morning. So me and the boy Sosa baby are spending the night in the airport. And one thing that I did learn the last time I was in Florida, the airport like shuts down all night until it's like, I don't know, maybe like 4:30, 5 o'clock. So you literally can't do anything. Everything's closed in the airport until like 5, 6 o'clock. So I don't know what we're gonna be able to do. I looked into maybe like trying to just do something for the night. The only downside of that is Tampa's airport is kind of far out there, and then to get to anywhere from Tampa's airport, like I'm not about to pay $60 to go to and from Tampa in an Uber. Just not really worth it. So I'm gonna try to take my laptop down with me. Maybe we can cook up some beats in the studio. We'll see. Maybe I can catch up on 48 Laws of Power. The book's unwritten here, no pun intended. No definite plans for it. But then we get into Houston Friday morning at 7 a.m. So after a full night of traveling, we'll get to Houston, spend the day just fooling by the pool, spending time outside, which I'm stoked for. I'm stoked to link back up with the boys. I think it's going to be a good time. And then we're flying back Sunday night. We fly out, I think, at like 7 p.m. Another downside to using Kiwi to book your flights, I got another long layover. This time, however, it's a bit longer. So we fly out around 6:37, and then we'll get to Tampa around like 10:30. I believe that's including like with the time difference. So we'll be back Eastern Standard Time, 10:30 or whatever. We'll land into Tampa, and then another long layover on a Sunday night. Nothing to do. So again, might crank out some beats in the studio, might whip up some work on 48 Laws of Power. Maybe I might even start the Art of War. You never know. But I'm looking forward to it. Like, I don't really care about the layover. I don't care about flying Frontier. Like, I got no beef with Frontier. Unless they like give me a reason to beef with them. They get you from A to B. And that's all that matters. Safety, safety's out the window. Everything else is out the window. But, they get you there. They get you there, and that's all that matters. Same with Spirit. Same thing. Actually, like, I don't know how to word this. If I were to pick which one I would go with, I would have to go with Spirit. I don't know why, but I much rather prefer to be on Spirit. Maybe it's just the yellow planes. I don't know. But that is, that's a little update on kind of where I'm at right now in terms of my travels, what I've been doing. I, again, haven't had a solo podcast in probably about a month now. So I feel like it's only necessary to, update everybody. To get into the final topic for this week's episode, what this whole episode was originally supposed to be about until I had other things come up that I wanted to update everybody on, is the Olympic recap. Now, I did one recap at the beginning of the Olympics after the first week, the first no cap recap of the Olympics. Then I hopped on a podcast with Thaddeus Breckenridge. We did part 2, week 2 of a no cap recap Olympic edition. And now we are back again for the no cap recap final Olympic edition. And I did have plans in mind with this. What I wanted to do was take like the Olympic theme song. Like I downloaded an MP3 off YouTube, and I kind of wanted to put a little mix to it, just seeing what I could do on Ableton. And I had planned to use that in this week's episode for like the intro song. However, it was so much more complicated than I would have expected. And I spent probably about a week every night just trying to figure out like what I'm doing. And I'm still like in the process of trying to learn how to use Ableton when it comes to beats, how to like utilize having a MIDI controller, learning learning all the little stuff, learning the specific instruments, what they do, learning the keys to the keyboard. It's a whole process. And another thing that kind of would have affected that, I don't want to get copyrighted for when I put this on YouTube. Like, I mean, I know how YouTube is. They might be strict about it. They might be a little lax about it. Wasn't going to take the risk. So just like, we're going to take like a 10-second break. Just imagine like the Olympic theme song starting now. Sing it in your head. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the little Olympic theme song in your head. You played into the imagination here. For this week's, the final 2021 Summer Olympics no cap recap, we're going to go over a couple things. Now, in the past episodes, we went through, upcoming events, highlights and lowlights, disappointments, and whatever the opposite of a disappointment would be, things to look forward to, I guess. We did that, and then just gave little sports facts, whatnot, to kind of keep the audience updated. What I'm going to do this week, we're going to start it off strong. We are going to break down the final results for the medal count. Now, as everyone probably would have expected, shout out to the boys bringing it home. USA came out on top with a real nail biter here. Like, I'm telling you, a nail biter in terms of gold medals, because throughout the entire 2-week period, the US was behind on gold medals. In the lead for total medal count, however, they were lacking in the gold medal department, and it wasn't until probably the last 2 days did it click in the USA's head. They're like, you know what? We got to bring it home for the boys. We got to bring it home for the boys. They picked it up, and we finished it off. The USA finished with 39 gold medals, 41 silver, and 33 bronze, for a total of 113 medals. Shout out to the boys. Second place, we had China. Just say that how Trump would say it. I'm not going to repeat it. Next, we have China with 38 gold medals. 38 gold medals compared to the USA's 39 gold medals. Like, I'm telling you, it came down to like the last day or two. 38 gold medals, 32 silver medals, and 18 bronze, for a total of 88. And then the Russian Olympic Committee finished with a total of 71 medals, which included 20 gold, 28 silver, and 23 bronze. Followed behind that in 4th through 10th place. I do not have the total final, or like the total medal count for these countries, but I'm just going to list them off in the order in which they finished. Number 4, Great Britain. Shout out to the boys. Number 5, Japan. Now, Japan definitely had me worried at early on in the games, because they were kind of holding it down within the top 3 to 4, competing with China, the ROC, and the USA. They finished 5th. Behind that finished Australia. Behind them, we have Italy, followed by Germany, followed by the Netherlands, and to top it off at number 10, France. So shout out to all the Olympic athletes that are listening to the podcast right now. Also, great work, guys. It was truly like an unprecedented year. I'm sure we've heard that probably a 1.5 million times. But I think this year's Olympics really are going to be, I think they're going to be constantly referred back to in future Olympic games. So 2024, 2028, 2032, I think it's always going to go back to the 2021 Olympic Games. Just because like everything was so different for this year's Olympics in terms of, I mean, literally everything. Like the opening ceremony didn't have anybody in the stadium. None of the events had any spectators. A lot of the athletes' families were back at home. So this year was truly different, and you really have to take that in consideration in terms of athletic performance. Like these people are in a country following COVID guidelines with all of like their biggest supporters either at home or kind of unable to see them just because of the guidelines. So it's crazy. I think everyone, performed to their best ability. We saw a lot of great events. We saw a lot of great performances, which I will highlight in a second here. But I mean, to close it out, the 2021 Olympics was truly one for the books. I mean, we saw a ton of stuff, and I mean, we're only a year away from the 2022 Olympics, which we'll cross that bridge when we get to it in terms of the no cap recap. Try to include Thaddeus Breckenridge again in on that. Maybe we can just do a little show for the podcast listeners when it comes to that. Maybe do some Twitch streaming. We'll see. But to kind of continue on with that, I do have a couple facts here following the Olympics that I had written down. Now, when I wrote these notes probably about a week ago, this was what was currently out. Things may have been updated by. From that stuff. um, but a couple facts about it. So I found this to be wild. Bangladesh, with a population of 149 million, has never won a medal. 149 million people in their country, and they've never won a single medal. Now, the crazier part is they're not the only ones. 72 other nations have never won a medal, and that includes Bolivia, Cambodia, Honduras, Nepal, and Yemen. That's just four. So a total of five. There's 67 more countries that have never won a silver, bronze, even gold medal. R.I.P. Poor went out for the homies. That is truly, really kind of sad to hear. Like, someone just needs to bring it home for the boys. Someone needs to really show out at the 2024 Olympics. Maybe they can do it the 2022 Olympics. However, I'm not sure if Cambodia and Bolivia, Honduras, or Bangladesh is going to have too spectacular of a Winter Olympics team. But hey, like, I'm ready to stand corrected on that. We'll see. Another thing that I have, the IOC, kind of like the overall committee for the 2021 Olympics in Japan, they contributed 1.7 billion, as Trump would say, $1.7 billion to the Olympic Games. Now, the downside to this is Japan could face a pretty large, pretty significant financial hit, as God, I can't talk. They could take as much of a hit as $1.4 billion. This could result in a loss of $1.4 billion to the city of Tokyo and the country of Japan. And it's crazy. And then in addition to that, Japan spent $15.4 billion on just postponing the games. So to push everything off 1 year, they had to dish out $15.4 billion. Next, on top of that, taxpayers for Japan paid $6.7 billion. $6.7 billion coming out of the taxpayers' money to support these games, which, if you weren't aware, a lot of the population was against bringing the 2021 Olympics to Japan with all of the coronavirus craziness going on. They didn't want it there. They didn't want all these people from across the world gathering. $6.7 billion. Like, truly, you have a right to say this. Like, if I'm paying money, I better be heard for it. Now, to kind of counteract that, to go against what the people were saying in terms of canceling the Olympics, moving it somewhere else, Japan spent $900 million on coronavirus countermeasures. So they spent a ton of dough trying to prevent the spread of coronavirus, which, I mean, in total, I think they did a fairly good job. With this. We did see quite a few athletes leave the games with coronavirus after testing positive. We saw a lot of athletes not come to the games because of the coronavirus, but $900 million spent on coronavirus countermeasures is crazy. Now, the 2021 Olympics was actually the first Olympic Games to use AI security features. So with artificial intelligence, they were able to identify and verify 200, listen to this, 230 million faces in 1 second. Now, talk about some crazy shenanigans. 230 million faces in 1 second. I don't know what to compare that to, like in terms of like a relative population for 230 million faces. That's like everyone in like, I don't know. I can't even name it off. Probably like all of West Virginia, maybe. So to identify every face in West Virginia in 1 second is wild. Like AI is truly on another level. I think a lot of people are underestimating the true power of AI, which I think only in time we're going to be proven wrong. Like AI is some crazy shit. Next, on top of that, there were a total of, when I read this, I wasn't 100% sure, like, if this was entirely true. It said that there were a total of 20 different records broken across all sports. Seems kind of low, I guess. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe this is actually like an accurate figure. But what they have written down was there were a total of 6 records broken in rowing, 3 in track and field, 3 in the velodrome, which is like cycling on the indoor course, 3 records broken in shooting, 6 records broken in the pool, 1 record broken, 1 record, excuse me, 1 record broken in climbing. I got the hiccups here. 1 broken in climbing, and then 4 broken in weightlifting. So let's add the numbers here. 11 plus, numbers don't look right. 6 plus 3, 9, 12, 15, 15 plus 6, 21, 22, 26. Why is it listing 26 different records broken when the website said that there were 20 total? I don't know. Maybe I got it off CNN or Fox News or one of these other, crazy news outlets that only post the things that, whatever. I'm not going to get into it. Anyways, to move on from that, there were a total of 11,656 total athletes that competed in the games across 43 different venues spread throughout Tokyo in Japan. There were 339 events that you could win a medal in. And this year's games was actually the most gender equal Olympics, like, of all times. So just under half of the Olympic population were female athletes. And then, the remaining were male athletes. So it was a 51 to 49% ratio, I guess you would say. So the most gender equal Olympics for the first time in history. Shout out to that. It's great to see. And then a recorded 83 teams reached the finals for their respective events. 83 different teams reached the finals for their event to then qualify for a medal. And out of those 83, 42 were on the podium, and 23 of those actually went on to win gold. Some crazy figures here. Now, for the younger generation of athletes, there were 14 athletes under the age of 23 that won gold medals. 14 athletes under 23 won medals. 6 of these 14 athletes won gold. I mean, I think I talked about this in the last no cap recap at the Olympics. Like, you have 14, 15, 16-year-olds winning gold at the Olympics. Like, that's truly crazy. I mean, these were skateboarders too. Like, skateboarders winning gold in the Olympics. And I think I said, like, when I was that age, I had no desire to compete in the Olympics. I wasn't even like skateboarding much at the time. But to be that age and win a gold medal for your country in a brand new sport, what a great feeling. So shout out to those 14 Olympic athletes under the age of 23. Now, a problem that we are now beginning to see with countries following this year's Olympics is that there are now fewer and fewer countries wanting to host the Olympics. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the next one is in Paris, and they aim to be the most eco-friendly Olympics of all time. where they're going to rely on a lot of green energy. Paris is after that. And then, if I'm not mistaken here, I think LA is in line following that. It takes, you got to take a huge responsibility accepting a bid to host the Olympics because, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of money, from pushing everything off 1 year, they spent, or they pushing everything off 1 year, like that city spent $15.4 billion. So they could face like potential incredible losses like that. And then, in addition to that, Japan paid $6.7 billion from the taxpayers, another large figure. So for countries to want to really take on this challenge of hosting the Olympics, like it comes with a ton of stuff. Like what we saw in the Rio Olympics, like a lot of Rio completely changed just to get ready for these events. A lot of things were covered up in Rio. A lot of things, they made it. They really polished it. I'm not going to say here. It takes a lot of effort to kind of get your country ready for the Olympics, get your city ready for the Olympics, and then you could face a potential financial loss, which is something we saw this year, unfortunately. So fewer and fewer countries are now kind of having the desire to want to host it because who really wants to really put themselves out like that if they could potentially face huge losses. Now, the last little thing that I did find to be pretty funny. I found it to be entertaining when I read about it. The ROC was, they had a lot of strong words towards the Olympic Games. Now, 8 out of 16. Am I reading this right? So half the Russian athletes. I wrote 8 out of 16. I don't know what that means. Shout out to Jamie who wrote the notes. Jamie, come on, get it together. So this is what it says. I'm telling you, 8 out of 16 Russians claim that the Olympic outcome was planned in advance. So they thought that the USA was already going to win it, which, of course we're going to win it. Yeah, this is our thing. They believe that this was already, kind of set in stone, these final results. And a quote that was stated by one of the Russian athletes: at the behest of Americans, the International Olympic Committee took away 2 gold medals from Russia. And those were out of those 2 medals that were taken away during the rhythmic gymnasts, those judges, in quotes, committed fraud in front of the whole world by awarding Israel gold and then giving Russia second. So to me, it sounds like, they're a little salty that they couldn't finish out on top. Don't hate the game. Is that how it goes? Don't hate the game, hate the player. I don't know. Is that how it goes? Something like that. Don't put any disrespect on the game. Like, don't be bitter, get better. I guess. So Russia, they're kind of wanting to sit on their high horse here, and think that everything's skewed. Again, don't be bitter, get better. And that goes to the 2022 Olympics. Let's see the ROC kind of pick it up. 2024 Olympics, Russia's going down again. China's going down again. USA on the top from here on out. Don't get it twisted. Guys, that is what I have for this week's podcast. I anticipated it being maybe like 25 to 30 minute podcast. And right now we're looking at like close to 40 minutes. 40 minutes, it's now 1:08. I still got to eat dinner, then get ready for bed, and I'm swimming in the morning. So we got a pretty packed schedule here before I leave for Houston. But again, thanks for listening to the podcast, everyone. Truly, I appreciate all the support. I appreciate the podcast supporters. If you are wanting to be a supporter of the podcast, check out the link in the description. We're working to build it up. I'm working with the team. I'm working with my assistant, Jamie. We're going to get the podcast up there. It's all a work in progress, step by step, day by day. Before we know, we are going to be the biggest podcast in the world competing with Impulsive. So stay patient, Stay true. Guys, thank you for listening, and I will talk to all of you soon. Oh, wait. Before that, also, like, I don't want to forget about this. I'm sorry, I just had to end it right there. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to contribute to the podcast, shoot me an email, justchrispodcast@gmail.com. It's that easy. Send me an email. I'm always going to respond back. Okay. That's what I have for this week's episode, guys. Thank you for listening. Talk to all of you soon. Take care. Deuces.